Hey guys, it's Cece, and today I am back in front of my bookshelves. So I made it safely back to Utah, I am back in my house again, and these shelves are not going to stay like this. In the next couple of weeks, I'm probably going to be getting a third shelf, which is going to go down on that end, and I'll be rearranging this whole nonsense. So that's why there's no knickknacks, and that's why I'm not going to give a tour or show you anything where it's moved. Just wanted to give you an update on my life. But today, I'm going to be doing a video that usually gets a bit of controversy behind it, so yes. As you can tell by the title of this video, I'm going to be doing an unhaul. And the reason unhauls are controversial, for some reason, people tend to get angry when booktubers get rid of books, which is I don't know. I have a hard time when I hear that. That kind of frustrates me because it's like, well, these are my books and they're books that I'm not really attached to anymore. And it's not like I'm like throwing them in the garbage. What I'm going to do with every single one of the books I'm going to show you is I'm either going to donate it to my local library, support your local library, they're the best, take books there, they usually need them, or I'm going to be selling them back to a local used bookstore so that I have credits and I can get new books. Unfortunately, I do not have the money to send any of these to any people. I'm very sorry. I know that that's often a frustration with people, but I just don't have the money to ship all of these books to everyone, and I have like 30. So it was just a time of change in my life. It was a time when I needed to get rid of a lot of books because my tastes in books have changed, and these are just ones that I'm never going to read again. So I'm going to kind of give you an explanation for each of these that I'm getting rid of, but we're just going to get through this really quickly. Sorry I can't give them away, but they are going to go to places and people that deserve them. These aren't in any kind of order, I just kind of stacked them all up because they're going to go to the garage as soon as I'm done, so we're just going to grab one off the top of the stack and go. And the first one of those is The Midnighters, The Secret Hour, and this is by Scott Westerfeld. It's the first in a trilogy that I read when I was younger, and the trilogy was ultimately fairly disappointing to me, and I'm never going to reread it, so I don't know why I still have the first book. The next one that I'm going to be getting rid of is Partials. This is by Dan Wells. It came out during the age of dystopians when everything was a dystopian book, and it is a trilogy, but I did not enjoy the first one enough to continue in the series, so I don't know why I'm hanging on to it. The next one I have is a book that I didn't enjoy last summer, and that is The True Adventures of Niccolo Zen by Nicholas Christopher. I read this for like a readathon, possibly booktubeathon. Thoroughly unenjoyed it, unfortunately. I'm really sorry, by the way. I'm sorry if some of these are people's favorite books. It's not anything against you, it's just that I personally didn't like these and don't see myself rereading them. So, yes. I don't think this is a lot of people's favorite book, but I felt I should mention that at this point. Just never gonna reread it, so. The next one is one that I'm going to be donating just to a, like, Salvation Army, and that is The Children of the Lamp. This is the first book, The Akhenaton Adventure by P.D. Kerr. I've kept it for too long. I got rid of the rest of the series, and I just held on to this one because it had, like, I used to love the series, but I'm never going to reread it. I'm never going to finish the series, and it's time that it goes. I'm going to be mixing the controversial ones in here throughout, so this is one of those. I'm getting rid of Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. I read this in January. I did not enjoy it very much. I had a lot of issues with it, and I felt like it was just not one that I enjoyed at all, and I definitely wouldn't read it again. So it's time to go back to actually the used bookstore from whence it came, so that a new person who may enjoy it more can get it instead. Next up, 2 AM at the Cat's Pajamas. This is by Marie-Helene Bertino. It was a fine book, but I'm never going to reread it again, so out it goes. This is another one that I just kind of picked up on the spot. That is Drift by Sharon Carter Rogers. It was a weird book. I didn't totally love it, and I didn't really find the ending satisfying, so there should be more room on my shelves for books I'm actually really passionate about. Next up, another book that I read last summer for a readathon and didn't enjoy, and that is Positively Beautiful by Wendy Mills. This is a YA contemporary that just didn't click with me. I felt like there was too much romance. I didn't really enjoy the way that the characters went, so out it goes. Next up, Across the Universe, and this is by Beth Revis. This is another one of the ones that I think might be more controversial. I read this book years and years ago, and I thought it was promising, but somehow in the years and years since I read it, I've never felt motivated to pick up the next 2 books in the series. So I think that that means I wasn't passionate enough about it, and it's just time for me to let it go. This one shouldn't be too controversial. It's a book I read like when I was a child, and that is Double Identity by Margaret Peterson Haddix. I really like Margaret Peterson Haddix. I think she writes really interesting sci-fi. I have more by her to read on my shelf, but I've just kind of grown out of this one and I no longer have interest in it. Next, we have a book called Unspeakable. This is by Abby Rushton. I read this last summer, and found it fairly disappointing. It featured a lesbian lead character, and there's supposed to be a great lesbian romance, but I didn't really enjoy anything about it. So unfortunately, I think I'm going to be donating this one to my local library. This one that's next, I'm unhauling only because I found a replacement copy of it, and that is the 8th series of Unfortunate Events, The Hostile Hospital by Lemony Snicket. I had 2 of these books in paperback, and I've been trying to find hardcovers. I found the hardcover of this one, so I don't have to have this paperback one anymore, so out it goes. Next up, Bellman in Black. This is by Diane Setterfield. Diane Setterfield wrote one of my favorite books, The 13th Tale, and this one super failed to deliver. I didn't enjoy the process of reading it, it didn't intrigue me, and it certainly didn't make me want to reread it again. I've asked around in my family, none of them really want to read it, so unfortunately it has to go back again to the same used bookstore that I bought it from. I am getting rid of 2 full trilogies on my shelf that I'm never going to reread. One of those is the Matched trilogy. Matched, my sister currently has in her possession, but she's not enjoying it either, so we're going to pair all 3 of these up and we're going to send them off. This is, again, just a dystopian trilogy that did not impress me, and I don't like the 3rd book, don't really like the 1st book, so unfortunately I'm getting rid of these as well, because it's not a trilogy that I loved reading. Next I've got The Mysterious Benedict Society and the Perilous Journey. This is by Trenton Lee Stewart. This is the 2nd book in the Mysterious Benedict Society series. It's a middle grade series, and the 1st book is incredible, but I just didn't love the 2nd book, so I'm going to keep my copy of the 1st book, but I'm going to get rid of this one because I just prefer to think of it as the 1st book alone. And I don't really think that this is necessary to the story. Next, I'm getting rid of Messenger. This is by Lois Lowry. This is the 3rd book in the Giver Quartet. The Giver is my #1 favorite book, and I love it. I enjoy the 2nd book, Gathering Blue, but I don't think Messenger and the 4th book, Sun, are worth it. So I'm going to get rid of Messenger, and I'm just going to keep The Giver and Gathering Blue, because those are the books I enjoy in the series. I just opened The Kill Order by James Dashner and found a bookmark in it from when I was still in high school, so if that indicates how interested I am in this book. The Kill Order is a prequel book to the Maze Runner series, and while I really like the Maze Runner series, I felt that this book was completely unnecessary to the story, and I would rather just keep the original trilogy and appreciate that. I don't feel I ever really need to reread the prequel, and if I was going to give the series to someone, I wouldn't recommend that they read the prequel either, so out it goes. Another slightly controversial one here, and that is The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. I know a lot of people have a lot of love for this book, but historical fiction just isn't my genre. I really tried to love this book, but I couldn't get into it at all. I did read it all the way through. It had some nice prose, but I'm never going to reread it. And so I'm going to donate it and make sure that someone who's really going to appreciate this story can get their hands on it and appreciate it in a way that I couldn't. Because I know so many people love this book, and it just didn't click with me. The next one is one that I'm sort of sad about, and that is Ghost Night, and this is by Cornelia Funk. Cornelia Funk, as I've said many, many times, is one of my favorite writers, and this is the most recent book that I read by her, but it didn't click with me. It's a middle grade book. I didn't like the protagonist. I didn't really like the story, so I'm going to be getting rid of this one and just keeping the rest of her books that I absolutely love. Next up is Desert of the Heart, and this is by Jane Rule. This is supposed to be a classic piece of lesbian fiction, and I didn't like it. I thought it was weird. I didn't really appreciate the story, or the characters, or the romance, or anything. Too bad, because I was hoping this was going to be fantastic, but alas, no. Next up is a book I bought and never actually read. I'm just never going to read it. I've had it for way too long. It's a book called Geek Lust, and it's by Alex Langley. I bought it on the spur of the moment. Shouldn't have, because I didn't really have that much interest in it then. It's just about stuff that's like geeky stuff in general, and I'm just not interested anymore. And that exact same explanation also goes for Tom Sawyer and the Undead by Mark Twain and Dawn Borcher. This was a gift. I don't really enjoy the original Adventures of Tom Sawyer, and so I don't really care to read the version with zombies in it. I never read it, but it's been sitting here too long unread, so it's time for it to go. Okay, this is going to be the most controversial part of this entire unhaul, I think, so I know. This is just a trilogy I'm never going to reread, and that is the Divergent trilogy. When I first read Divergent, I absolutely loved it. I didn't like Insurgent, and I absolutely hated Allegiant. And it's just not a series that I'm going to reread. It's not one I enjoyed. My sister read most of them, and she didn't want to finish them either. And someone is going to be very happy to be able to get their hands on this series. I'm possibly going to donate it to my library because I know big trilogies like this are sometimes hard to get at my library, so unfortunately I have to say goodbye to the Divergent trilogy as well. Next, I'm getting rid of Green. This is by Ted Dekker. It is book 0 in the Circle books. You're supposed to be able to read it at the beginning or the end of the series. I tried to read this last summer and had to DNF it because it did not nearly match up to my standards for the rest of the series that I absolutely love. It's one of my top 5 favorite series. And this is like largely unconnected. It's really weird. It kind of changes everything about the series, and I decided that I didn't want this book to kind of ruin my appreciation of the original 3, so I'm saying goodbye to this one. The next couple of books I'm getting rid of both came in a subscription box, and I've just decided over time that I'm not interested in reading them. I didn't personally buy them and pick them out for myself, so I don't really feel that bad in saying that these just aren't books that I'm going to read. So those are Ascenders by C.L. Gaber and Unforgiven by Lauren Kate. I'm not really interested in the Fallen books. I know you don't have to read those to read this, but it's just not a series I'm interested in, and I've heard some pretty not great things about this book, and Ascenders just also isn't a book that appeals to me in any way, so I'm going to be getting rid of these two. And the final book that I am unhauling is The Fifth Wave by Rick Yancey. I enjoyed this when I read it, but I have no interest at all in continuing on with the series. I've heard basically nothing but you're not gonna really like this about the book, so I just am not interested in continuing on with the trilogy. I don't think I'll ever reread this book, and that's kind of why I keep books on my shelves, is that I might someday reread them. So I'm going to be getting rid of The Fifth Wave as well. Okay guys, that is my unhaul. Those are the books that I'm going to be donating and giving to people, or just in general, they're going to other homes. I'm very sorry if I unhauled like your favorite book. I am not in any way saying that that book is terrible or that you shouldn't love it. If you love that book, that is great for you and I'm so happy for you, but I want to make sure that these books go to people who are actually going to enjoy them. So it's time for me to just clear some space on my shelves and feel a little bit more fresh about all of these. Thank you guys so much for watching this crazy unhaul. I am a little frazzled because I've been moving all of my stuff down here. I'm moving to the basement of my house and I've been living upstairs. So I'm gonna try to keep videos on track for the next couple of weeks, but I'm just kind of getting settled, so they might be a little all over the place, just as a warning. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!